US versus China. Which will end up at the top? This is the reason for all the US hostilities towards China. What can China do about the US hostilities? Succumb to US pressure, slow down its economic growth, become a willing second to the US. Will that please the US? Not likely. Even if China is willing to become a US dependency, it will still not be able to satisfy the US lust for power. The only way that China will not be an existential threat to the US is when it ceases to exist. A world without China. That's the US dream. Dream on. China should exist as a nation in its own way, with its own values and its own dream. It should rise as high and as fast as it can and strive to be the best that it can be. That's the most fundamental rights of a free nation. If these can propel China to the top of the world's League of Nations, so be it. The Chinese do not have to be apologetic about it. This does not mean that China will become the world's dictator or a world hegemon. Chinese will not claim that their way and values are universal and must be adopted by people all over the world. Instead, it will be a truly free, open, diverse, and inclusive world. It will no more be a us unipolar world.
China has achieved its development in a peaceful international environment, and a peaceful international environment is still what China needs for achieving modernization. Here I want to emphasize 2 points. One, China will not seek expansion. It is now a developing country. It has no intention to pursue expansion, and even if it grows stronger, becomes stronger in the future, it will not follow the old logic that a stronger country is bound to seek hegemony. What China wants is to develop relations with all other countries and regions on the basis of mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit, and work together to build a community with a shared future.
If Chinese way, values, and dream are all wrong, China will implode and come to an end, without any external force. But Chinese civilization has lasted for millenniums. Throughout these thousands of years, the Chinese have endured many dynastic rises and falls and survived the conquest and rules of invaders from its north and the semi-colonization and carving up by imperialists from the west. In the 21st century, China is again facing grave threat from the west, simply because China is on the rise and Chinese power and influence are growing fast. The West feels threatened by such a China. Led by the US, the West is forming alliances with like-minded nations to contain, control and counter China. They call it competition, not confrontation or conflict. Instead of competing on the pragmatics of national governance and development, they go for ideologies and values.
Right now, we're in the middle of a great power competition with an authoritarian regime in Beijing that seeks global primacy and rejects democracy. China's government is planning on winning the AI race, winning future wars, and winning the future. And the truth is, if we're being honest with ourselves, Beijing's well on its way to accomplishing these goals. America's at risk of falling behind economically and technologically to a world power that doesn't value liberty or even human life.
The bigger coup for the Chinese Communist Party, if TikTok is permitted to continue operating in the United States, and if WeChat and other Chinese platforms are allowed to continue to operate, is that it gives the Chinese Communist Party the ability to manipulate our social discourse, the news, to censor and suppress or to amplify what tens of millions of Americans see and read and experience and hear through their social media app.
I think the other big lesson that we've been talking about, and certainly Mr. Paul talked about, is it's a big mistake to give an authoritarian regime coercive power over your economy.
The economic policies of the Chinese Communist Party represent a clear and present danger to the American worker, our innovation base, and our national security.
Which state actor is the key threat to democracy in Australia and amongst the Five Eyes partners.
If we had to focus on one, the Chinese Communist Party, no doubt.
Chinese, we've seen it front and center. It's a massive effort from the Chinese state.
We're locked in a great power struggle with China.
Beijing has increased its bullying and provocations in the Indo-Pacific. It's embarked upon an historic military buildup, including in space and cyberspace.
Instead of competing in peace, they intend to go for war. Using lies, disinformation, misinformation, fake news, fear-mongering and warmongering, the US is weaving a web of conspiracy to entrap China in a war. China should avoid war. It is reaping the dividend of peace more than the US. Left in peace, it will overtake the US. But China has to be well prepared for war in order to avoid it. It doesn't have to be like this. The world may be able to accommodate both. Or only one of the two will stand the test of time. If China is as bad as what the US has been demonizing it to be, then it will not last. If demonizing China takes the US mind off its own decadence and decline, then it too will not last. Which one will outlast the other to be the winner, let time decide.